Hey, Sens fans, welcome to today's episode of the Senstennial Podcast. Today, we're excited to be joined by Trevor Shackles, who writes about the Ottawa Senators and I believe also the Vancouver Canucks for the Silver Seven Sens. So, Trevor, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Not too bad.
We are doing
Excited to,
A-okay.
uh, Bennett's got a toddler he's chasing around the house, but
Oh boy.
I think otherwise, we're Matt and I are just preparing our own wedding, so it's a bit of a busy time,
Oh
but
wow.
uh,
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Exciting
Yeah,
stuff.
it's been a wild ride the past year. So actually I'm gonna hand it off to Bennett. Bennett's kicking off the show tonight.
Yeah, thanks again for joining us, Trevor. Glad to have you with us today to
Of
talk some
course.
Senators hockey. Before we get fully started here, we wanted to talk to you about your experience of being a Senators fan at a distance. We know that you're based out of the West Coast. Maybe just a couple of minutes on how you discovered the Sens, how they became your team, and what it's like following the Senators from BC.
Yeah, of course, Bennett. I know Matt, you were saying something about writing for the Canucks. I don't actually write about them, but I am born and raised in Richmond, BC. Live in Vancouver right now, but yeah, it's there's no real connection to the Senators, if I'm being honest. I do have like I guess second cousins in Ottawa, but yeah, I think the connection to the team is simply just, I was born in '96, and I think when I was like a toddler, saw them on TV. I guess like the colors, like the jerseys, maybe. I really don't know. There's like pictures of me at like 4 years old with a hat, a Sens hat, and I
Wow.
think I don't know. I felt connected to them, and then kind of when I was like, 8, 9, 10, I really started to watch them and follow them, and I was like, okay, this is my team. And I think by the time when I was 11, when they obviously lost in the final, I think at that point it was like, okay, well, there's no going back, like I can't, it's going to feel cheap if I jump ship now. And, as jealous as I was of many of my friends around here last year for the Canucks, um, it wasn't a super long run, but they still went to game seven of round two. I was very jealous of that. But at the same time, I've always said that whenever the Sens do win, it's gonna feel just that much more special. So, yeah, I can't say I have too much of a connection to Ottawa, although we'll actually be there this weekend for the Canucks game, so that'll be very fun. First time I
Nice.
get to see a Sens game at the CTC. So, yeah.
Wow.
Oh.
That'll be
That's a
exciting.
big
Oh.
deal.
So if you guys want to
Yeah.
meet up, I'm there. But
Yeah, I'll be in the
yeah,
stadium that night.
You get
love
to
it.
try the legendary cold water?
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, baby.
Yeah,
Milestone night.
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
what so what's it like you experience, Senators hockey differently than from other fans, obviously the time difference is one thing, but also,
Yeah.
having until, this week never setting foot inside CTC. How is that? Do you think that's had an effect on your fandom? Like do you think it like how do you think that experience plays out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's definitely different than, you know, like I'll be honest, like it sucks not being able to go. Like I'll go every year when they come and play the Canucks, and that's great. And,
Mm.
um, but got to shout out fellow Sens fan Steve on Sens on Twitter. He
Mm.
moved here actually last year, and
Oh,
there's kind of
cool.
a group of us that have been watching some games this season, and there's surprisingly a lot of Sens fans out here, and I've met like a decent number of them that are, I'm getting closer with, and so I'm hoping that there's some more important games that I can watch these games with people, because yeah, for the most part, like growing up, it's just been me watching them by myself, and like I still get to feel like a part of the fan base through Twitter and blogging and all that stuff. So I don't feel like super disconnected, but it's definitely different, right? Like I want to go to the bar and watch the game, and but yeah, luckily like there actually are some people that I know here, and I think when there are some big games, uh, you know, there is a relatively big community, surprisingly big community of Sens fans out here, whether they're from Ottawa or not. But yeah, it's definitely different than if you're actually living in Ottawa and going to the games. So again, jealous of that, but at the same time, just being online, you can still have some of that connectivity.
And you also get the
Cool.
perks of being able to watch West Coast games at a
Oh
reasonable
yeah.
hour.
Oh yeah. I mean, Pacific time zone. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
you could on a Saturday night watching from 4 till 10. It's great. So
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
You
that's
can
money.
watch the Sens annual Western road trip implosion in real time.
yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
Exactly.
What about 2015, Bennett? Come on. The good
Yeah,
That's
times.
yeah,
great.
yeah. 10 years ago, we
Yeah.
didn't lose.
Literally. Wow. That was 10 years ago. Oh my God. Yeah.
5 years before the inception of the show. Oof.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jeez.
and speaking of the good times, when the outdoor classic was in Vancouver and it was the Sens in Vancouver, did you go?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Nice.
they haven't won a ton here, right? They've lost a good chunk of games. So it was nice.
Yeah.
Actually, that was the first time I've seen them. I had seen them win in Vancouver. So because there were some
Wow.
years they didn't play here, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. So that was good.
And
Love
yeah,
to see it.
yeah, and I guess when I was reading through a couple of your articles, I noticed one was about the Elias Pettersson squared. So I think
Yes.
that's where my
Yeah.
comment about the
Yeah.
Canucks writing.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, sorry. So we want to move on to goaltending because it's been a hot topic, and as I just alluded to, I noticed one of your recent articles was about Linus Ullmark, and
Hmm.
obviously that's something that's seen a lot of debate in social media. Lots of comments, some quite overboard, some just kind of like worried or maybe a little concerned about his results so far this season and how they've been uncharacteristic of how he's played over the majority of his career. So, you were preaching about patience in that article, and that was on November 6th. Now, it's been
Hmm.
almost 2 weeks since then. And I was just wondering, are you still of the opinion that we just need to be patient, or are you starting to have maybe a little bit more concern coming in?
For sure. I think anyone saying that, oh, he's been totally fine, obviously they're kidding themselves. I don't think anyone is actually believing that he's been good enough, right? It's been 10 games so far though, which is pretty tiny sample, especially for goalies, right? Like you look at Jeremy Swayman. I don't know. Actually, I think they're losing right now, I believe. I don't know if he was starting, but I know it was 3-0 Columbus. So
Good to
um
hear.
yeah, so like I'm just checking right now. Yeah, he's allowed 3 goals on 16 shots. So like this is a guy who's had a coming into tonight, he had an 888 save percentage. So and that's in 13 games. So it's like yeah, I'm not loving that his performance is at 890 through 10 games, but at the same time, goalies are just so random. And also, I think people need to recognize that the save percentage, the league wide save percentage is so low this year. I think I don't have the exact numbers recently, but I think like about a week ago it was around 892, 893, which is crazy low. It was like
Yeah.
the lowest I've seen it in my lifetime. So um, and that obviously still puts Olmark below league average, right? And again, not going to make excuses for him. Even if you look at the goals above expected, like he's negative in that. He's not looking good. At the same time, coming into the game on Thursday against Philly, he's coming off that shutout. He had around, I think
I
it was
think
like
he
a
had a
903, 90.
904. Yeah.
Yeah. So like going into that game, you're like, okay, he's on a better track. I just think it's a little bit much to after one other bad game to be like, oh, okay, now he's awful. And it's like, are we really gonna do this every game, go back and forth of like, oh, he's back, oh no, he sucks, oh, he's back. I just think I think this whole season so far has been so many fans going because they've, won two, lost two, won one, lost one. People have been going so far back and forth that I just think we need to relax a little bit and just give it some time. Like, is it frustrating? Absolutely. But I mean, Olmark's track record speaks for itself. He's had a 918 in his career in 257 games. And sure, he hasn't like ever had a huge workload, but it is a little bit better that Forsberg has at least been not amazing, but he's at least been like a good enough as a backup to start that you can trust him a little bit. Save for that first goal in Carolina. But yeah, it's something that I'm not loving right now, but you just look at how dominant he was in Boston. Like I can't imagine I saw somebody saying some ridiculous comment recently about how Olmark is the new Corpusal, and like that's just get out of here. That's just ridiculous. So Yeah, I'm looking for some changes. I want him to play better, but I also I just can't press the panic button just yet.
And I think Ullmark is one of those goalies who thrives on a better, more high quantity workload. The two games recently that he hasn't been stellar have been low shots, not a lot of opportunities, and you like as a goalie you get bored. This is
Yeah.
this is just factual. Not every goalie's Martin Brodeur and thrives on low shots, and that's actually way more difficult. And so when Allmark gets shots like often, he's succeeding, and I think he's getting games where the recipe is just for a disaster. He's getting like Philly had 7 shots
Yeah.
through
So Matthew,
half of the
are you
game.
saying that you should tell Travis Green to not be so good defensively for the team?
I would venture to guess that play your backups against bad teams and play
Yeah.
your starter against good teams. It's almost a weird recipe. I should probably be a coach in the NHL.
I agree.
And speaking of that, switching gears from personnel to staff, Travis Green's now at the helm, and nearly 20 games into the season, you have also followed the Vancouver Canucks as stated
Yeah.
previously. Um, how does it compare in contrast to his time in Vancouver with his time so far on the Sens?
For sure. I think when he first came here in Vancouver, the first season or two, I think people were really I don't think they thought he was like as good as Talkett was last year for the Canucks, but I think he had a lot of fans in the city, and like a lot of coaches do early on, saw a lot of potential with him and the team. I think in general during his whole time here in Vancouver, the roster talent just wasn't there, and you've seen over these past 2 seasons in Vancouver where they've added such good quality depth that they just never had before. Where there's, they were able to add Pius Suter and Dakota Joshua and, Kiefer Sherwood this season. Just like these kind of not amazing players, but like solid depth that they can actually use. And Green never had that here. So I think coming into Ottawa, I wasn't like super high on him. I was more just like, well, you know what? People weren't high on Talkett coming into Vancouver either. So I was just like hoping a prayer, like if he can do the same here. And I do think in general, coaches are, I don't know, they can be pretty random at times, just like goalies can. So I I have really liked what I've seen so far in terms of the metrics, right? You look at their expected goals at 5-on-5. They're second in the league in expected goals against, which is crazy. I'm shocked that they grade out that well in terms of defensive numbers and just overall expected goals. They were around top 5, top 6 coming into Monday night. So that is why I am actually quite optimistic about this team. I don't care if their record is 8-1. I'm still pretty optimistic about if they're continuing to play this well. I think they're a playoff team. Now they still need to actually play that well, and they still need to actually get the results, which they have only somewhat gotten so far. But yeah, like it's hard to look at the results under the hood and say that's not from Travis Green and his assistants, right? Like I think you have to give them some credit there. And I think the only blemish that I would say right now is his reliance on Travis Hamonic. But then again, I think every single coach has a weird obsession with one player on the team. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to be too greedy if that's his one thing and their other numbers are much better. I'll take it, right? So I think you have to be pretty happy with how Green has performed so far. Again, very early in the season. It's only a month and a half in, but yeah, I'm optimistic with where this team is heading. It's just we need those actual results to follow.
Yeah, and another stat that's nice to see is think of all the years under DJ where the Sens would get peppered with shots every game. And right
Yeah,
now they're sitting at sixth fewest shots against a game, which is kind of unheard of. And I think that
yeah,
also kind of going back, one of our little conversation points here, that I think affects goalie stats as well, Like think about Olmark had a decent enough game in Boston. I think Boston had fewer than 20 shots on net. So, of course, you get a win. You only allowed 2 goals, but it reflects poorly on your save percentage because your team was able to stop Boston from really getting into your zone, setting up offensively and getting shots on. So that's kind of nice as well. And I wanted to also add, Mike Johnson was on the radio on TSN 1200 here, and he was saying that, at this point in the season, it seems like Travis Green has gotten what he wanted from a defensive structure out of the team. And now it's going to start shifting to trying to focus on how to keep that defensive structure, but also start becoming more deadly at 5-on-5. So we'll see if that's, just, Mike Johnson's take, or if that actually starts to kind of show up on the score sheet for the Sens. But
I like that they've focused on defense first, right? So like they've got that down, which is just literally hasn't been the case. Like I tweeted earlier in the week is like, this has been again, we got to preface this all the time, just saying how early it is, but like, this has been the best defensive team since like they went to the cup. Like genuinely, they haven't had this good results in terms of shots against and chances against. Maybe not necessarily goals against yet, but it's been impressive.
They'll figure
right?
that out.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, and I mean, Trevor, I think that in recent years you've cultivated perhaps something of a reputation as a Sens pessimist on Twitter, and which is something that I appreciate as someone who has often been inclined to feel the same way.
For sure.
You've touched briefly on what has you feeling a little bit more optimistic. Do you think that extends to the new Sens ownership as well and the management of Steve Staios? Do you see signs for optimism in how they've steered the team so far, or are you focused largely at this point on, the influence of Travis Green for closer to the ice level?
For sure, yeah. And I think Bennett, I think we would probably both identify more as like realists, right? Like I don't think
it's like I don't like thinking the team sucks, but I do think it did for a long time.
Yeah, but sorry, like in 2019-20, it's like, yeah, sorry, if I'm saying that this player sucks on like an awful team, yeah, he probably sucks. Like I'm just calling a spade, and like there hasn't really been, and I have been very, the last 2 seasons, very intrigued to see where the team would go. Just obviously didn't go anywhere, but I like where they're heading now. Like I said, because of those results where it's like most of the games they've been out chancing the teams. Like the results I think will follow over the course of a full season. Doesn't mean they're necessarily going to win the cup or anything, but I think that should be good enough to be above league average. But yeah, I think like there's definitely things to be optimistic about. I think overall, just the health of the franchise, right? The fact that it seems like hopefully LeBreton is finally happening. The fact that Andlauer wants to get that done and is probably good enough to get that over the finish line. That is huge for the city, right? Being able to have that downtown arena and having an owner that cares, that actually wants to win, that he's there for the games, watching the games, and wants to invest in this team. That's huge. I think Staios, I'm still kind of like, I'm gonna wait and see with him. I think he's done some good things. Some things like I don't know, but I'm not like super all in or all out on him. The only thing I would love to see a bit of an overhaul in is some amateur drafting. I think they've really, not necessarily an overhaul, but at least an influx of people brought in. Like, for example, the fact that they haven't drafted out of Russia since 2006, like that is insane to be doing in 2024 in the NHL. Like, I think
Russia famously full of bad hockey players.
Yeah, honestly, it's like, what are we doing here? Like we need some, like they literally have Mikko Ruutu as their European scout, and I think, is it Osberg? I think Anders Osberg. They have like 2 European scouts. It's like, okay, you need to beef that up a little bit more. So I would love to see a little bit different philosophy there, but like overall, like if you don't have a good owner, it's really, really hard to win. So just the fact that they have Andlauer, I feel like he really cares and actually wants this team to win, wants to succeed, which I just didn't get the sense with Melnyk. So honestly, after that, things will follow. And, does that mean they're guaranteed anything? No, but I don't know. Like I'm feeling better than I have about this team since maybe like 2022 summer. Everyone was very much on a high, but
Right.
Besides that, like I haven't felt this good about the organization in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to be up on them when they're actually playing because you're like, oh
For sure.
crap, they're bad. Like,
Yeah.
and being a
Frustrating.
Sens blogger or a Sens podcaster, it's very difficult to not be critical or
Of course.
real for as you said, but in that sense it can be really challenging when you're you're expecting different things and then it doesn't work out. But this season there's a good possibility that it will. And
Well, I was
on
gonna.
that note,
Oh
oh,
wait,
go ahead.
before you go, I want
Yeah.
to quickly throw in there that I think we were also pretty hyped when they traded for Chikrin, like when Dorian made
Yeah. Oh
that
yeah.
move
Oh
at the
yeah.
time,
Oh
like
yeah.
regardless if it wasn't the positional need, it was like the big fish on the market. Everyone was trying to manifest it. It kind of felt like when Duchesne was traded here. Everyone was like, I feel like for a couple years people were trying to manifest that. Um, but I think our Salmonella's per 60 has gone down since he left to the team. So probably for the best. But sorry, Mal, I'll turn it over to you now.
Yeah, I mean, you had to talk about King Name Chaser himself, Pierre Dorion.
Didn't Bennett run into him at a sandwich shop last year?
I did run into him at a sandwich shop. I did ask him. This was in 2022 before we traded for DeBrincat, and I just straight up asked him what we were going to do for the seventh round pick. And then the sandwich shop owner, griefed me a little bit after. He's like, hey, come on, like he's just here to get a sandwich. I don't like, And I was like, it's respectful. I was respectful.
Were
I
you
was
a
just like,
Pestos?
yeah, it was
Yeah,
Pestos.
yeah.
Shout
Okay.
out to Pestos on Hazeldean.
Yeah,
They make a good porchetta. But
yeah.
Senstennial Podcast looking for sponsors.
yeah. Yeah, I shot my shot and first I couched it. I was like, hey, like thanks for everything you do. And then, what do you think you're gonna do for this with the seventh round pick? He did not tell me. But of course that is what became Alex DeBrincat, which as we know all worked out amazingly, and he still plays for the team and everything's cool.
Yeah.
And he's a 50 goal scorer, noted 50 goal scorer.
Has he scored another goal since like he started really hot for Detroit? Was it last
He
season or this
always does
season?
Last
that.
year,
Same
yeah.
with this year too. I think he
Yeah.
had like 7 goals in his first 10 or something.
Right.
Yeah, and then he became,
yeah,
who he actually is.
regressed to the mean. Maybe it was Patrick Kane all along.
Maybe. But Trevor, we gotta ask, this has been a bit of an up and down season so far, but who has been the biggest surprise for you thus far?
That's a good question. I honestly, I think I'm gonna kind of go two here. I think Gaudette has to be the first one. I think when they signed him, this was a guy he hadn't played he didn't play in the NHL last season, right? So it was like, okay, well, that's a great AHL signing, right? So will be great for Belleville, and he's been great on the fourth line. I think that is I can't remember the last time they've had such a skilled player on the fourth line, and what I like about it is inevitably there's going to be an injury up top, and I'd like to see him get a little bit more ice time when that happens. I don't necessarily think he's is a top six forward or anything, but I think he's provided some real value, and I don't think his scoring streak is gonna last, and obviously he's already tapered off a little bit, but he provides some value, and you can see it in how well the fourth line has been playing in terms of they're outchancing other teams, which again, I can't remember the last time I've seen Ottawa's fourth line do that. So Gaudette has been great to have on that fourth line, even if he's just a bit better than replacement, right? That is just a godsend that they haven't had. And then I think a guy that needs to be playing a little bit more, which is surprising, is Jacob Bernard-Docker. I think he's actually played really, really well with Tyler Clevin, and I think he's only played 6 or 7 games or something, but to me, he needs to be in over Hamonic. He's actually provided some solid results, and Clevin and him have been pretty sheltered. The top four is getting more of the tough assignments, but even so, they're doing exactly what they need to be doing in those minutes.
Yeah.
They're limiting those chances against, they're not going to put up a ton of points, but that's all you can ask for your bottom pairing.
Yeah.
So, all of a sudden this is a guy, oh, okay, he isn't going to be a guy that's put on waivers, and he shouldn't be. Like, I think he actually brings some value there. And so yeah, those two guys, didn't really think of much of them coming into the season, but all of a sudden they could be providing some good value on the fourth line and on the third pairing.
Yeah, and I actually posted some stats about that. Sometimes it's hard to explain advanced analytics, but I tried to do so on like Twitter and Blue Sky and Threads today. But essentially, like Clevin Hamnick, their pairing has an expected goals against of about like 1.75, which is quite good. But their expected goals for is under that number, which
right
it means that you're getting a net negative out of that. Whereas like Clevin JBD, their expected goals against is like even lower, which is great. Around 1.5 or less, and their expected goals for is over 2.25. So, you're getting a net positive out of that. And so that's something that, it was interesting because I remember when Travis Green was hired, he said he was going to be a little bit more analytics driven, and that's how he is. And maybe they just see this as because the expected goals against is quite low, like it's not a big issue. I'm not sure. But I think if you're looking purely at like a numbers perspective, JBD and Clevin are even better defensively when on the ice together, and can give you a little bit more offense generation. Even if they're not scoring points, you get a little bit more threat out of them. So I'd like to see that, like you. But like you said earlier, Travis has his guy, and it's Travis.
Yeah.
So I think to kind of end off the show, I want you to choose a single roster spot on the Sens. And if you could upgrade it with an external player, which spot would you choose? That could be, any spot. It could be top line left wing. It could be, bottom line right wing.
It's tough. Was it you guys that put out this poll this morning, or was that someone else?
I didn't know this was a poll.
No, well, it was a similar question. It was like, if you could, what would you rather have, a middle six winger or like
maybe I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember who posted, but it's a tough question. I lean more on the defensive side just because I am very worried about Artem Zub getting injured and then having to have Hamonic and JBD. I mean, I know I just talked about JBD, but like I don't really want him in a top 4 role, and that might have to happen if there's an injury. So I just just knowing Zub's injury past and concussions and stuff, it would be real nice to have another right handy. And then if you did have JBD as a 7th, that's just like an incredible luxury to have. And who knows what would happen to Hamonic at that point? Like, actually, that'd be tough because I guess he does have the no move clause, so that would be a little challenging. But in this hypothetical scenario, I think just their D would be super solid in that case. Not necessarily getting someone that is a stud. I think that'd be unrealistic. But just for example, like thinking forward to next year, if they're able to have Carter Yakinchuk in the lineup, like that is going to be a huge game changer. So something like that. So I would say that's my pick, but then also like I think also it'd be real nice to have just another winger in the mix that can potentially play, like I would probably say on the left side, going behind Kachuk, and because I like Perron, but I don't necessarily know if he's going to provide the offense that they need. So,
and he's not a long-term solution either.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I think either one of those spots would be good. I would probably lean more towards the right side just because of the potential higher injury risk. But yeah, I don't think you could go wrong with either one of those spots. And it looks like they're going to have some deadline cap space. So that's good news.
And interestingly enough, that you mention a top 6 left winger, not that I'm advocating for it, but it was brought to my attention that the one and only 2010 first overall pick, Taylor Hall, was a healthy scratch for the Blackhawks
the
other night against Vancouver. So Interesting to see what'll happen there. But
Mhm.
yeah,
And
I
the
agree with
story
you.
behind that one's also actually kind of interesting. Like he wasn't told anything. He wasn't told,
Mm.
"Oh, this is what you need to work on. This is some video that shows you doing it." It was really interesting. One of the top Reddit comments was like, 5 minutes after he found out, he was like, "All right, I need out of Chicago. Like, no.
Damn.
This ain't happening." When you're
Do
getting
you know who
scratched in
I am?
Chicago, like
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
but could you have imagined, if it was last year, we're desperate to find a right hand defenseman, and then a guy like Dante Fabro ends up on waivers? Like, I know his results haven't been the best this year, but
Yeah.
neither have Nashville's in general. And it just would have been, and like, how many times have you seen that guy in like a theoretical Sens lineup? Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. It's too bad that he's making a little bit too much, right? He was making two and a
yeah,
half. Like, if he was making one, then
yeah,
I would be curious to know if they would have claimed him. But no, you're right. Like that guy's been in trade proposals for years. So glad
yeah.
he honestly is somewhere else then.
Yeah, absolutely. And now he's probably one of the best defensemen on Columbus. So
Yeah.
good job.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining us tonight, Trevor. Really appreciate it. Thought we had a good chat. Time kind of flies when you get into the weeds on stuff. So appreciate it. And is there anything you want to plug before we call it a night? Any new articles or anything you got in the chamber?
Um, Nothing coming up, but I just want to say, yeah, no, thanks for having me on, guys. I think the last podcast I was on maybe like a year and a half ago. So it's always fun going on anyone's podcast to talk about Sen. So it's always a good time. But yeah, I guess just on Twitter or X at ShackTS, and then Silver Seven Sens website still going strong. So and you can support us there for some extra bonus stuff if you feel so inclined. But there's also free content as well. So yeah, just always down to talk Sens. And I guess, yeah, if you're listening to this and you're this is before the 23rd, I'll be in Ottawa on the 29th and the 22nd and the 23rd. So yeah, let's meet up. I'd love to meet meet a lot of Sens fans.
Yeah,
Uh,
we'll make sure to
yeah.
plug those. Sorry, go ahead, Bennett.
Oh, I was
Before
gonna
I hand off.
say, if you're looking for food options at the CTC, Tendy's Love Chicken is, I think, the current leading destination among most Sens fans.
Okay, okay, good to know.
Yeah, they have good chicken fingers and chicken burgers and stuff.
Sweet.
And avoid smokes. It's not good.
Man,
Yeah.
it
You know
used to be
what? You know
so
what's
good. It
funny?
was like
Yeah,
good bang for its buck. Like,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
now it's trash.
But you know
yeah.
what? So the for me, the one that I've been getting that kind of has like I can't now not get it is the bacon ranch or bacon chicken ranch one that Smokes has. I find like now that I've had that, it completely trumps any of the other ones I've had. So now I
Yeah,
don't like not
they
get
need
that.
to add ranch because they can't make gravy to save their lives. So they need to cover the taste of
They
it.
yeah, so I don't so they okay, we're getting into this now. I'm not a fan of their beef gravy. I kind of find it tastes like a
Yeah,
little
it
weird,
doesn't taste like
but
anything.
their vegetarian gravy tastes way better. So anytime
Mm,
I get one, I ask them for vegetarian gravy, but get like
Interesting.
a meat
Yeah.
uh
A meat on
and
top.
yeah. And
Okay,
I don't know,
interesting.
it works for me because I
gonna
had
get weird looks.
Yeah.
well, yeah, I know. They're probably like, who the hell is this guy? But I'm telling you, it's definitely a game changer for Smokes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
My guilty pleasure. But yeah, I was just gonna say we'll throw the links to Trevor's Twitter or X account in the description. We'll put your blog in there too. And yeah, I guess I'll see you on the weekend. We'll grab a beer or something.
Love it. All right. Cheers, guys.
All right,
Yeah.
see you. Have a
Awesome.
good
Thanks,
night.
Trevor.
Thanks for having us. Take care.